Good morning, guys.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sunil. Okay. Yesterday, we started discussing about the epidemiological studies in anthropology, correct? So I think brief idea about what is epidemiological anthropology and few aspects of it, starting from the definition of health to understanding the difference between infectious and non-infectious diseases. We briefly, conceptually, we worked on understanding these diseases yesterday, right? So today we are going to focus on nutritional deficiency diseases connected to the nutrition component, plus in addition to that, to add some current perspective on this. So I'm going to discuss briefly with you the status of non-communicable diseases in India in comparison with the communicable diseases. As I was briefly mentioning to you in the class yesterday, that we are going to talk about a report given by about almost a 2 decade long studies or data that came from about 2 decades long. What did we learn in India in terms of where we are heading? So this fits very well into the epidemiological transition theory. At least we believe that it is fitting very well into the epidemiological transition theory. So we are going to put into the perspective of what is epidemiological transition theory, and then we also discuss about the status, communicable, non-communicable, which is causing more burden in India. Mentioned about it. I'm going to briefly show you that, a brief idea on. So why non-communicable diseases are on rise in India, what needs to be done, what is government doing for it. So those type of aspects that we are going to focus on. Okay, right. So first I think let me deal with the nutritional deficiency disorders. We'll talk about the role of nutrition and what are the different diseases that happen because of the nutritional deficiency, and in evolution, like for example, agricultural dependent systems that we had in India, how did they result in the more nutritional deficiency problems? Like the way we went yesterday, we'll take the Allen Stanford biological anthropology content on this, where we discuss how food probably caused issues, okay, or can or are causing our vulnerability to diseases, correct? So we are focusing on multiple dimensions. Don't get confused here. Depending on what is being asked in the exam, you have to pick up the points. When I'm going to actually wind up, I'm going to summarize some of these ideas. So what we learned yesterday, what is health condition, what is actually health by definition, what is epidemiological studies, what do they include, what is the importance, correct? If you get a question on epidemiological anthropology, the things that we discussed yesterday you should focus on. Plus we also talked about infectious versus non-infectious. How does infectious disease spread, how does non-infectious disease spread, types of infectious diseases, we focused on them. Also examples of non-infectious and non-communicable diseases we talked about, correct? So we got the conceptual understanding. Today first we'll finish talking about nutritional deficiency diseases and importance of diet in maintaining the health, and then we'll talk about the NCDs as part of the transition theory, epidemiological transition theory. Now, right. So first of all, I think let me pick up that biological anthropology book by Allen and Stanford chapter on this. So I'm sharing that document with you here. Okay. So this I have already shared with you yesterday. I'm not sure if you get a chance to look at it, but there is a subheading in that called diet and disease. What is the important role of diet and disease? Okay. So we are going to focus on this. And also compare this question talks about Paleolithic, how changing culture and progress in our lives is affecting the diseases that are caused due to the nutritional problems. Okay, compare and contrast Paleolithic and agricultural diets and recognize the implications for switching from one to the other on human health, either this perspective or in general, What is the role of diet, and why and what type of diseases do we see because of the deficiency of certain elements in the diet? Something that we all can easily relate to, correct? So a very good introduction has been given as part of this chapter. If you're having difficulty in seeing the screen, do let me know, but I'll usually I prefer to put them on a bigger font. So what are we learning? You know it very well. What is the role of diet in our health? Why do we need food? Let's ask this very simple question, correct? Why do we need food? To satisfy various requirements of our body. What are they? What are the various requirements of our body?
Energy.
What is it,
Energy,
Very
then
good.
fighting against diseases.
Right. Maintaining a good and healthy immune system. Okay, very good. Shweta.
So functioning of organs.
Functioning of organs. Okay. Right. Normal functioning of physiological systems. Providing energy for them. And also, what else do we provide? Energy is definitely an important. It's like providing electricity for a company, for an industry, right? So our body has to run. It requires energy. Energy has to be produced. For that, we definitely need food. Okay. Immune system, physiological systems, you're absolutely right. What else do we get in the form of food? One definitely is energy. Attach it to that. What else do we get for supporting our body's growth?
Vitamins, nutrition.
Nutrients like vitamins. Okay, good. Preeti?
Nutrients, vitamins, minerals,
What are nutrients?
iron.
You're right. Iron, minerals. What do they do? What are they actually? How are they helping us? What happens if we don't eat minerals? What happens if we don't eat vitamins? What are we missing?
There are several deficiencies that are caused.
Correct. They cause. Why do they cause? So what aspect of them that the need that we have would result in that deficiency if we don't eat them? Very simple question, nothing complex. Okay, just idea. Energy is one component. What else? Why else we need these components? What are they doing? Iron. What does it do? Where does it go?
Hemoglobin binds with hemoglobin.
Hemoglobin. It's raw material for making RBC, right? So some of these components are raw materials for making parts of our body. Cells need to be made with the lipid layer. We need enough proteins. Of course, we don't eat the proteins from plants, and those do they work in our body as it is? If you eat a plant protein, you eat an animal protein. Do those proteins go and jump into our body and work the proteins the way they were in their body, the plant's body, animal body? They don't. What do? We break them down into their physical constituents. Like proteins, we break them down into amino acids. DNA, we eat plant's DNA, animal DNA. Does plant DNA, animal DNA instruct our body to work? Do we actually use animal genes and plant genes to run our body? We don't. We actually break them down into their constituent parts, building blocks. So from DNA, we create nucleotides or even smaller portions of those nucleotide chunks. What happens? Our body, in the process of DNA replication, can use them. Similarly, we eat plant protein, animal protein, we break them down into amino acids. And those amino acids can be built because amino acid is a universal concept. Whatever microbacteria to plants to humans, we all use same form of amino acids with very slight difference. So in a way that raw material is useful to us. You say we break them down, their proteins, their DNA, use those building blocks to create our DNA, our proteins. So they are providing us the raw material. They are providing us energy components, sugars, glucose. We break them down and generate ATPs with the help of 13 mitochondria of every cell. Similarly, we also have vitamins and certain minerals there. They play as enzymes, cofactors. They're essential for, let's say, for blood formation, for blood clotting process. We need vitamin K, we need calcium. We study them, right? In general science, we study about calcium and vitamin K. So they are playing an important role in formation of something that is essential for body to perform. Like that, these are all the various requirements we satisfy using food. Nothing complicated. We just have to put into the right perspective here. Okay? Right. I just want to mention here, I hope you don't get intimidated when I ask you questions. Okay? My reason is not to tell you or prove you that you know something or you don't know something. My idea is to bring you into the interaction, to bring you into the discussion process. Okay? Don't feel bad. If at all, if you're feeling too bad, do let me know. But my goal is not evaluating you on anything that you know of, but just make you participate in the discussion, because these things actually, part of it will evaporate in no time. Okay? But when you're actually starting to think, you're able to connect, then they make much more sense. Your preparation will not stop with my class. If you really think, it will go beyond that class. Is it something that you're all comfortable with? Nothing new that we do on an everyday basis? Why do we eat rice? Why do we eat chapatis? Why do we eat colorful vegetables? Okay, that is because we want to provide enough diversity. Okay, so that we get all raw materials that is needed. If you focus on one particular food, you maybe become easily deficient. That is what happened with the agricultural populations, including us. Okay, we're in a new era now, but this is what is happening. Okay, right. Power. Right. So this is a brief idea, I think nicely discussed in this chapter. So this is a very good chapter for us. So we'll take it as a core idea, anthropology, along with the IGNO materialized scientific. So definitely today, I think we are in a very confused world. Today you hear glucose, sugars are good. Tomorrow you hear sugars are worse. And fats are good. Once one person says today, saturated fats are good or unsaturated fats are good. Suddenly Americans say that coconut is the worst fat to eat. Studies, I don't know if you heard about it. They said coconut is the worst fat to eat. But the whole state in India, Kerala, relies on coconut for most of their oil sources. And Kerala, if you look into the statistics, is the healthiest state in India. So one side, Americans say that this is the worst fat, and people who survive on them are the best at health. So it looks like there is a geographical variation, individual or cultural variation, or either if I use the word ethnic variation, but the way we respond to the body, the way we are used to the food that we eat, seems to be different. Something that is maybe toxin to someone else may be the best remedy for us. We don't know. There are enough differences that confuse people. So this is what they talked about in the first part. So the way we think about diet has actually is being changing almost on a daily basis. Studies are indicating something that probably were initially thought to be good, maybe they were bad. Right? I don't know if you heard about various diet forms where they said don't eat sugars at all. Take the carbohydrates out. We don't need them. Just eat fat. Fat-based diet. I've seen many people, met people who said they took out the carbohydrates. They're out of sugar. They're out of diabetic problem. I don't know how long it is going to sustain, but millet diets we have been hearing about. Nothing wrong, but if anything that suddenly changes would cause a problem. Then keep that in mind. Right. So despite all confusion about diet, we all have the same basic nutritional needs. Doesn't matter how people lived, a few millions of years ago and how we are living today. The nutritional needs might have not changed quite a bit. We need energy. Where do we get energy from? We get energy, mainly we eat carbohydrates to provide us energy, but fat can provide energy, proteins can provide us energy, as we are talking about already as part of fat content in human body. So carbohydrates, fats, proteins, they all can provide us energy, but easy to extract energy from the carbohydrates. And fat is difficult. We know it is very easy to put on weight, but difficult to lose weight. Correct? Fat is a main culprit here because it is difficult to burn fat. Right? So proteins are also important sources of energy, but they are serving different purposes. Proteins are actually building muscles. Proteins are enzymes, functional components of our body. Right? Similarly, fat, we already discussed about the fat, different aspects of insulation, hormonal production, right? So they do serve, and the outer layer of the cells, they do serve different jobs as well. Otherwise, they're also providing us energy. Correct? So, and we require all of these components to satisfy our body's requirements, as I was telling you. In addition to them, we also need, because these carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are called macronutrients. We need them in large quantities. We eat them in grams, several tens to hundreds of grams we eat them in. Correct? But we also need micronutrients, meaning nutrients that we take in smaller quantities. If you take macronutrients in grams and above, and micronutrients are taken in milligrams, micrograms quantities, they are nothing but vitamins and minerals, correct? So we need vitamins, basically organic molecules that our body cannot synthesize. Some of them, especially we have some vitamins our body cannot synthesize. So what do? We basically take them from outside, okay, in small quantities so that they can support variety of metabolic processes. So macronutrients are raw materials and energy sources for us, whereas micronutrients would fill the gaps. They would help run the metabolic processes or chemical reactions that happen in our body. Similarly, to vitamins, we also need inorganic elements. These are minerals. So vitamins are organic. They have hydrocarbon structures in them. Whereas minerals are inorganic from the periodic table: iron, zinc, manganese, magnesium, calcium. These are all minerals, correct? We also need them because, as I was telling you, calcium is important for blood clotting process and maintaining the blood pressure. Manganese, chromium. We have been hearing quite a bit about these minerals, correct? They're definitely important for our body to normally function. So this concept has not changed as far as our understanding goes in ages. But the problem is the way we approach to get the food has changed. Correct? So over the past 3 decades, scientists are actually working on creating what is the average Paleolithic diet. In old Stone Age, what did people eat? What were they eating? How healthy they were? We are curious, correct? So we were trying to ask these questions. So they were trying to reconstruct the average picture of the diet that was part of old Stone Age or Paleolithic diet. Of course, not everyone in different parts of the world ate same thing. So there were differences. People in North America, people in Europe, people in other places might have eaten different forms of food. So there is no doubt about that. Correct? So there are enough differences. In sub-Saharan Africans, they were eating not the same thing as Native Americans on the Northwest Pacific coast. But still, we could reconstruct an average idea about Paleolithic diet. Derived from anthropology, so paleoanthropology studies, fossil-based studies, epidemiological studies, nutritional studies perform in that. How do you know what they ate, what type of food they ate, and how do we know that what type of diseases they have? You study them in part of archaeology. Correct? You can see the bone malformations. You can see certain deficiencies. People might have lost their teeth, deterioration in their teeth, for example. So the observation, careful observation of fossils, okay, would give them some idea. Okay, this wouldn't give an evidence, but this would give them idea. Okay, these people probably at certain age, we'll talk about briefly in forensic anthropology part, they had weak bones. They had this part of the body not well developed. Today we know the connection between food or the diet that we take and the components of it and what parts of the body actually are taking help of it. So they actually kind of reverse engineer this process. They would look into, okay, how this body structure looks like. So fossil studies in archaeology, along with some other studies, would tell us what probably they were eating, right? But this is like, it's like fixing a puzzle. They'll figure out from bits and pieces. Partly we'll talk about unit 1.6, fossil studies, human fossil studies and this. Okay, but definitely things have changed over a period of time, exposing us to specific problems, specific set of problems. Okay, and definitely we all agree that in the perspective of human diet, agriculture changed the scenario. Right? Initially, when we kind of invented the concept of agriculture, slowly adapted to the agriculture. At the same time, we didn't have a complete picture. What do you want to grow? What do you need? We didn't have a picture because hunter and gatherers, what they were doing, they were eating things present in the wild. They were eating lots of vegetables, fruits. They were actually hunting and eating the meat. So they were getting enough diversity of foods, correct? But what happened in the agricultural societies? We started growing certain specific type of crops. So the diversity decreased or increased with agriculture?
Decreased.
With agriculture, it is decreased because we started relying on few set of crops. We didn't have technology, knowledge to grow them. We were relying on very few of them. Slowly we expanded. And current world, I think the whole concept of food has changed. It's not what you need. It's what is actually more beneficial commercially. So where you can make most of the money by growing, better rice or better looking rice. So things have drastically changed. But even those days when we started the agriculture, we were relying on few set of crops. So diversity has decreased. So definitely in the perspective of human diet, agriculture changed everything. We started introducing new foods compared to what they were there, but the variety is gone. And problems associated with specific dietary deficiencies are becoming more apparent. We started seeing if you only eat rice, this is what is happening. If you only eat maize, this is what is happening. People started realizing that there are certain deficiencies. No single food is a magical food. But unfortunately, agricultural practices put us, at the risk of nutritional deficiencies. Okay. So, and of course, because of Green Revolution, we actually went from the scarcity of food to the abundant food. Now the issue is not producing enough food for the growing population, but the food that is actually provides a balanced diet to us. Okay. So here in this image, in this particular chapter, they have nicely compared the difference between Paleolithic diet and current diet or contemporary diet. Okay, most of them you don't need explanation, but I'll briefly tell you the key points here. Okay, understand it. Okay, because this handout is this PDF is already given to you, but get the essence of what they are talking about in this table. So energy, what they were eating in the Paleolithic time and what we are eating today. So high calorie intake, they were eating actually more calorie rich food. Even you don't have to think about Paleolithic, even our grandparents, our great grandparents, what they were eating, they were actually eating high amounts of sugar rich foods. But they also had more active lifestyle than what we have today. Similarly, even compared to the agricultural societies, Paleolithic diets, meaning the hunter and gatherers, they actually had more active lifestyle. Correct, we talked about. So between them, already enough changes have happened. And between agricultural societies and our societies today, again, same amount of difference that we notice today. Yes, life has changed. The way we live has changed. So high caloric intake was taken to mainly support their active lifestyle. And whereas in contemporary diets, we are more on the sedentary life. Fewer calories. I think we definitely are worried now, conscious about calories. But still, we eat more than what we need. General picture. So our consumption often exceeds the expenditure. So we eat more than what our body needs as per our lifestyle. So we're still eating more calorie-rich food. On average, this varies huge from person to person. We know that, right? So micronutrients. If you talk about the micronutrients, vitamins, antioxidants, folic acid, so vitamins and minerals, they were actually consuming high amounts of these micronutrients. 65 to 70% of the diet was that. Why? Because they used to eat enough fruits, roots, nuts, and non-cereal based foods they were eating. Because they were not going to store and buying what is more attractive, correct? They were just finding whatever is in the nature, and there was enough diversity in the nature, and they were eating it. But today, what happened? I think I remember reading this National Institute of Nutrition, Hyderabad-based organization study a few years ago, that we Indians are deficient in micronutrients. That form of food, the type of food that we eat is very low in micronutrients. We eat high quantities of calorie-rich food. Correct? So low consumption of foods rich in micronutrients is what the current trend is. You see what is actually exposing us to more diseases. Next, I'm going to tell you about examples of diseases. But understand this, where this is coming from in the socio-cultural aspect. Next, I think this holds more or less true. Electrolytes, sodium, calcium, potassium. These are also micronutrients. Olden days, they used to consume more potassium, more sodium, for sure. Definitely more potassium compared to sodium. They had less intake of sodiums compared to us. Also, they were very active, so they didn't experience much of the high blood pressure problems which we are experiencing today. So today we actually eat more sodium than potassium because of the processed foods. Processed foods, to preserve them, they use a lot of sodium. Sodium chloride, if you eat tomato puree, ketchups, lot of salt is there in that, right? So unknowingly we are consuming more salts. That is where we are experiencing more high blood pressure issues. Sedentary lifestyle, activity has come down and we are introducing more and more salt. Completely opposite to what used to be the case in Paleolithic diet. In Paleolithic times, they were actually eating more potassium, less sodium, okay? And they also had enough activity. Opposite is true today. We eat more sodium and we have less activity. What happens? So we actually are more and more prone to heart-related problems, blood pressure-related issues. No wonder the major cause of death in non-communicable diseases is the type of heart problems where blood vessels are blocked. Next, carbohydrates. I think more or less we talked about it. So provides 45 to 50% of daily calories should come. Half of our energy requirement should come from the carbohydrates. But in what form they were eating? They were eating in the form of vegetables and fruits. They also contain enough carbohydrates, right? When you eat mango, when you eat any fruit, usually it tends to be sweeter, correct? Why? Because they're rich in sugars. Apples, bananas, mangoes, majority of the fruits actually are sugar rich. Of course, along with them, they also bring us fiber. So they were eating these type of vegetables, okay, fruits, which are rich in amino acids, fatty acids, and micronutrients for energy requirements. Today, same, no changes happened, but the what we are eating for getting energy has changed. What do we eat in the breakfast? Cereals, right? Muesli, or we eat cornflakes, correct? So definitely we are eating more processed foods. Sugars, sweetness are a part of them. Bread and jam, processed jam. This is not real fruit, right? Small amount of fruit, but completely processed kept with preservatives, which are low in amino acids, low in fatty acids, low in micronutrients, good in taste. But what do children eat? My children actually usually ask for bread with the chocolate. Bread with chocolate. They can survive without eating any other foods because it is dominated by our tongue. But our requirements are different. Correct? So things have drastically changed on this front. Similarly, fats. Okay, fats are supposed to only provide us 20-25% of calories, not more than that. And how are they getting fat? So they were eating animals which are actually have less fat. They are more lean animals they were eating. Okay, so compared to the domestic animals which tend to be now more fatter because we use growth hormones on them, or we feed them enough so that we can earn more by selling their meat. Now things have drastically changed. In those days, they were mostly relying on the lean animals, so less fat, more protein. But now we were getting more than 40% of calories from the fat, mostly from the meat and dairy both. Okay, so what do? We actually eat lots of different forms of animals which are high in fat, less in protein related. So no wonder we are also experiencing one of the heart related problems. Okay, protein, of course, essential. They were in olden days in Paleolithic diet, they were eating high amounts of protein, providing 30% of calories. Okay, again, through the animal meat was a common theme for them. So today, it is actually recommended that we should get 12% of the total calories from protein, not too much. Because high protein can also result in high rates of heart problems. Because the source of the protein here mostly brings us fat. Animal meat rich in fat, if it is a main source for protein, what happens? Milk does bring enough fat to us. If you see in the developed countries, actually doctors recommend adults to drink, toned milk, 1% milk or below. But otherwise, full fat milk, what we drink, so you get enough fat along with protein. That is again putting us at higher risk for heart-related problems. Okay, and they used to eat more fibers in those days, high fiber diets, because fruits are rich in high fiber. Okay, and full grains are rich in fiber. But today, I think 20 grams per day, we are eating much, much, much less of fiber, resulting in digestion related problems in people. And we actually go for magic pills to solve the problem. But indeed, the problem is in the food that we eat. So definitely, quite a bit has changed since the Paleolithic time. We're talking about few millions of years, 2.5 million years ago. Story we are talking about to today. So do you all agree, or at least get a feel that what has changed in these times, and what is actually behind the problems that we are facing with respect to our health? Health status is definitely affected because of the diet approaches that we are taking today. And a clear indication can be seen for this. And more science, more intervention of technology is creating more confusion, if I have to tell you today. Because we are now more confused what to eat. Saturated, unsaturated, but definitely no trans fat. Definitely no fat, because the good tasty food usually comes in the form of fried foods, chips, correct? Nicely fried items that we eat, burgers, for example. So all of them are considered to be very bad. We're in a completely new era now, Western style food. And I remember talking to, I think one day it was part of a conference, if I'm not wrong. I happened to talk to, she was an MP from, in where I was doing my PhD. Okay, she's from Sweden. Her ancestors were from Sweden. She was MP, and we had some sort of conference that was going on. Happened to got into a discussion, and she clearly said, this is what her opinion. She said she's from Sweden, and whatever she eats in Canada, she settled in Canada, but she had a lot of food allergies. And she says, my grandparents ate a different food. The genes I got from them were adapted to different environment. And today, with that the set of genes, I'm eating a completely different food. My body is not accepting it. So it takes enough time for us to get used to the new form of food. And nowadays we are trying to change the food diet in a week. Today you follow, Wali's millet diet, or we have more famous or infamous people in our states who recommend us more sugar rich or less sugar and more fat rich diet. So this is becoming more common, and our body is not meant to adjust to that in such a rate. Okay, so definitely where we are from, what foods we are eating, there must be some sort of friction between our genes, because they probably are evolved to support you for certain type of food. We might have little flexibility, but I've seen that people who don't drink normally milk have started drinking a different milk. When they go to other countries, A1 milk, A2 milk, it's different qualities of milk we drink. Certain milk they're not, they're more sensitive to. They start showing allergies. So definitely lifestyle has now completely changed, and because of more connectivity, what are we noticing? In our shelves now, we eat food that otherwise made or imported from other countries, which is not suitable for our body. Our body may not be useful to. That is why we are running into a lot of digestive related problems, okay, today because of these things. But in the anthropology view, I think how things have changed from Paleolithic time to contemporary time is, I think, very important aspect for that. So questions on these type of things comparatively are very much possible. Use this table. I found it really, really useful. Okay. And nothing complicated, right? Something that you can easily understand. Okay. Right. So I've highlighted few points here related to this. So I was telling you already, the contemporary diet is not a more abundant version of the hunter and gatherer population. Quite a bit of qualitative things have also changed here. It's not more, but it's also to do with what is it composed of. So definitely quality of the food has drastically changed. We are probably not worried about quantity anymore, but the quality of the food that we are eating. Okay, right. So I think I already discussed this. This is basically what we already discussed. Okay, right. Just now I pointed out to you with an example that I mentioned to you, that comparison between hunter and gatherer and the contemporary diets, today's diet, it clearly indicates that increasing number of people, more and more people are living in nutritional environments for which their bodies are not adapted. As I was mentioning to you, okay, our bodies might have not adapted to what we are eating. Keep them in mind. I think this principle seems to be working. Eat what you are used to eat, but may change the quantities of it. Understanding your own body needs. rather than completely switching to a new diet all of a sudden. Body may not accept it. Okay, right. So most of the negative health effects, we'll pick up the examples of what problems we are seeing today. Most of the negative health aspects of contemporary diets, such as obesity, diabetes, cancer, they're critical only later in life. So what you eat today may cause enough damage to your body which becomes apparent at a later point of time. Okay, the diet, the habits that we have today may become obvious later or may show up later. Okay, it's likely that health problems associated with the mismatch between our bodies and our nutritional environment is, I think, causing enough burden to us in terms of that. Okay. So what are we doing? I think I let you read this. I don't want to get into this component. They said today we are trying to switch to the life of caveman and cavewoman in the supermarkets. Okay. So really, I think our approach is not helping so much because we're trying to quickly adapt to something else. Okay. Right. I think we need enough time to adjust to what we are eating. I should continue to eat with slight modifications to the food. I think that is what my opinion is. Okay. Right. Let's pick up the examples of what type of problems that we normally notice. Right. So you see, this is what I was kind of talking about. Enamel defects due to malnutrition in a child from Illinois Valley, 600 to 1200 AD. So they could identify how teeth malformations have happened. They can relate that to certain deficiency diseases. So this is how they get clues about what they have eaten. So this is mostly guessing game through in data that they would get. Okay, now what type of nutritional deficiency diseases that you are familiar with? Okay, I think I'll first start talking about, before starting with this part here, start talking about the macronutrient deficiency diseases. Macronutrient deficiency diseases. Okay, let me put another source to you on this. So I'm sure you probably are aware about macronutrient deficiencies, correct? Are you? So what are the known problems of macronutrients? Are carbohydrates, fats, and sugars, fats and proteins. So what are the known diseases, deficiency diseases related to them that you are aware about? What happens if you don't get enough protein, enough carbohydrates, enough fats? Are there any known diseases?
Stunting.
Stunting, okay, right, very good. So growth inhibition happens. We don't attain the normal growth. Stunting is absolutely right. What else?
Anemia.
Anemia. Anemia is mostly micronutrient deficiency, right? Iron. Okay. Okay. What else? Have you studied this as part of general science, where two diseases that usually show up?
Pellagra.
Pellagra also micronutrient. We'll talk about pellagra and those diseases. Yes, they are micronutrient deficiencies. No? Okay. Have you heard about kwashiorkor, marasmus? No? Okay. Not very, very common, but I think especially the areas where malnutrition is a common problem, you notice it. So in IGNO material, they talked briefly about it. So with respect to the nutritional deficiency diseases, I want you to first write about kwashiorkor and marasmus. I'll tell you briefly what they are. Yes. So this part, ecology of malnutrition in the IGNO material that you notice here. Pick up information from here. So we have several diseases, several malnutrition problems, okay, have been notified, have been realized in the past. Two such diseases comes to our mind. One is kwashiorkor, another one is marasmus. What is kwashiorkor? Kwashiorkor is a Ghanaian word for second child disease. Okay, so it is known as second child disease. Why is it called second child disease, and what deficiency do we notice here? So it is associated with, let's say, in many developing countries or underdeveloped countries, it is a common theme to have children one after other. And what is the requirement for children? Children supposed to be nourished by mostly, what is the main food source for the children when they are below 1 year? It is the milk from the mother, correct? But what if she actually is actually in the process of having a second child? What happens to the first child? If first child doesn't receive, enough duration of input of milk from the mother, okay, so what normally happens when the baby is taken immediately following the weaning? Weaning means when baby goes away from the mother's milk to the alternate food. It is called the weaning process, which often takes place after the birth of the second child. So what happens if the first child is born, mother is taking care of the child. Physiologically also, we study this partly in the growth, that as soon as, your body, women's body actually designed in such a way that if she's actually feeding the baby, menstruation doesn't happen. Menstruation doesn't happen. There is no egg that gets released. But as soon as, the weaning takes place, or as soon as the milk production decreases and mother is not providing enough milk to the baby, egg gets released. Thereby, her body prepares for the second pregnancy. Like that, when second pregnancy happens, her body, hormonally, her body changes, prepares towards the next baby. So what happens to the first baby then? First baby now has to be put on to a different food, which may not be too nutritious, because we give something to the babies, not necessarily the balanced diet. That is what happens in underdeveloped countries. So what happens in those cases when the second child is born, first child is weaned from this mother's milk. Then what happens? The baby starts showing up. The first child starts showing up sudden problems. And in many parts of the world, especially in the tropical places, the child resorted from mother's milk to a diet adequate in carbohydrates, but not much protein. So they will have enough sugars in that diet, but not much of protein. And which is usually a starchy gruel made of yams, taro roots, corn, rice, millets are routinely used. More of sugar, less of protein. But whereas mother's milk would provide both calories as well as proteins, rich in proteins. It is designed naturally for a baby. But as she is undergoing the process of second pregnancy, her body would not produce milk. So baby has to be fed something else. And that something else usually rich in sugars but not rich in protein, which would result in a disease called kwashiorkor or second child. Kwashiorkor disease shows up when second child is born. So they correlate like that in Ghana.
So this second child is if it's born very quickly, only then it's the issue, right?
Second child disease is one. That is in the context where there is no gap between two children. When the first baby is still has not completed that enough duration of reliance on mother's milk. Normally they say 6 months minimum, 2 years the best case scenario to feed the babies, with slight supplement of food for the baby digestive system to kick in. Otherwise, if you shorten that duration, so then your baby is more and more prone to problems. But even that can be handled if baby is given a proper diet. But most of the times, what do? Our focus is mostly on the calories, sugars. So some African places where they eat yams, they provide cooked yam, nicely like a paste of yam, for example, or potatoes. Rice in our places we put a lot of rice, corn, millets, they are given, right? And especially processed. Many of them are processed because we buy them from the supermarkets. Okay, so because of that, they don't receive enough protein. In many of the developing countries, meat is expensive. They can give animal protein, but they're expensive. They go with what kind of finances they have. Correct? So that's where child may receive enough food for satisfying hunger, but does not receive enough protein for normal growth and development. And normally they say that for about 12 to 13 years of period, in our early stages of our life, protein plays the most important role of anything. So protein-rich diet is very, very important. Such a disease is called kwashiorkor. I'll show you this is how babies look like. So I think the image that you see here looks as if they are too fed, right? The thing that you see, the protruding belly, is a major sign of this disease, which is because of extreme protein deficiency, malnutrition problem here, poor quality of food that they have taken here. So what happens in these cases? Normal person is flat like this. Kwashiorkor person has a protruding belly. This is mostly edema, water. This is because of lack of protein, body is filled with water. So the belly is not because they're overeating it, because the water is getting retained in their body. That happens because of inadequate protein. So people are fatigued, they're irritating. Talk to them, they won't talk normally. Lethargic, they don't move, less active. Clear signs of this deficiency, nutritional deficiency problem. Along with what happens if you don't get enough protein? Growth, normal growth won't happen. Muscle, what happens to the muscle? Muscle loss happens because no protein, no muscle. Edema, so retaining water. Immune system gets weaker, and this protuberant belly. We don't see much of this in India so much, but yes, not to the extent of seeing this problem, but it does happen. Malnutrition is a very big problem, right? So Poshan Abhiyan too, recently our Indian government announced, huge problem. Anemia, stunting.
Sir, is it temporary or is it once done you cannot get away with?
In the sense, see, temporary in the sense, this is a crucial time when they grow, that is when you are not providing the raw material for building muscle. So what happens? If that crucial period is lost, you cannot regain that. How much ever food you give afterwards. It all depends on how long did it go for. Few months are all right. It went for few years in the crucial stages of their life. Can they attain normal height? Can they attain normal body weight? They cannot. If they cannot attain normal body weight, their immune system becomes weak. They are more and more prone to infections, early deaths. So this is an ongoing process. Even if you give enough food after age 10 or age 15, it would not help. It would not compensate for what they missed. So this will have long-term implications.
There is also an article recently about gut bacteria, where if children, if they, depending on the dietary habits at the very young age, it depends on how their gut bacteria is affected, and it's irreversible when they become adults. Even if they change their diet practices, they don't go back to the original condition.
But I think we are seasoned. I think initial stages we actually prepare towards the coming years. And now we are realizing more and more about the importance of microorganisms in our gut. Correct? So like we're talking about a lot of foods which are rich in microorganisms. Probiotic foods are becoming more a common theme. Nowadays, if you get diarrhea or other problems, they're recommending us to eat probiotic yogurts because they supplement the microorganisms that probably died in the process. And we are understanding the importance of these microorganisms, and clearly it is a very complex interplay. When are those microorganisms composition is defined? As you are saying, some researchers are pointing out that it is done at early stages of our life. Even if we switch the food to something else in the later stages of our life, our digestive system is not prepared to digest it. So your body may reject it. Correct? So definitely I think this is a bit more complex. Our gut bacteria is definitely helping us in digestion, and which probably seems to be defined in early stages of our life. So these dynamics we have to think before we switch to the new food entirely. And trying it, sometimes you slowly try the new food and see how your body responding to it. But sometimes it may not be immediate response. You may see the response at later point of time. Gluten sensitivity has become a common theme. If you go to some developed countries where they actually add extra amount of gluten for making it more sticky for the wheat. But what happens? Some people are sensitive to gluten. I heard 160 times or so amount of increase happened in gluten. How does your body respond to it? Your body sees it as a foreign particle and responds and kicks it out. As soon as you eat gluten-rich wheat, what happens? You will have diarrhea because your immune system has not recognized it, or your microorganisms in the gut are not trying to or cannot digest enough of that. So definitely, I think new trend has come. We are experiencing more and more problems because of processed foods. And this will ongo. Like basically, this will continue to cause problems to us in later stages of our life. Okay, this is one example, kwashiorkor. Let me quickly move on to the next disease, which is marasmus. Marasmus, derived from the Greek word which means withering or wasting. Wasting is also a common problem, nutritional deficiency problem. What happens in wasting? You lose muscle. Basically, quantity of the muscle will go away. They become thin and lean. What happens here? This marasmus is caused due to the diet low in both protein and calories problems. Previously, we talked about low protein. Here, it's both low protein and low calories. Okay. So most commonly seen after weaning, once they're taken off from the mother's milk, that is when this is seen. Otherwise, it's more common in children of up to age 5 years. They tend to be very, very thin. I'll show you an image of that. You might have seen this image from Africa, especially places where people don't get enough food to eat. Okay. So this is how normally they look like with marasmus. Okay, they don't get enough calories and protein together. Okay, calories, what happens? If you don't get enough carbohydrates, if you don't have enough fat, what do you use it for energy source? Your body will eat up your muscle. That is why when people do exercise, a right amount of proteins and diet is important, not just exercise. So what happens? Protein is eaten up. Body is converting protein into energy. That is what results in wasting, loss of muscle. Do you see any muscle on this body? You basically see the bone covered with skin. That is mainly because of low calories and also low protein. Disease known as marasmus. Okay, briefly discussed here. So symptoms of marasmus include extreme growth retardation, wasting of muscles, and wasting of subcutaneous fat. Do you think they will have any fat at all in their body? As I was telling you, which is important for the children. And diarrhea, they won't be able to digest the food well. Severe anemia are the symptoms of this. So as I was talking to you, because of this missing of vital nutrients, when it is critical for brain growth, mental growth, what happens? Mental retardation often occurs. So this will have long-term implications on the child's life. And it may even kill them. If you don't have enough protein, enough energy to fight diseases, what happens? People who are malnourished are more prone to infections and diseases. They may not even survive.
Sir, is there any any evolution also taking place because they don't have anything to eat?
I don't know how evolution can actually design something like this, because if you don't have anything to eat, first of all, in the evolution, the size of us in the various complex parts of our body has to be maintained through that. The alternative is to bringing down the body size to the minimal systems. Right? But the complexity will be lost eventually. I don't know if there is any directionality to that side. Only thing is you may not become fit to survive. Our species will go away. Something else will survive. Otherwise, I don't think you will have humans who can survive without eating food. Of course, we do hear sometimes in the news people have not eaten food for years, ages. We don't know. That's still a mystery for us. But evolution has no plan. Basically, we have to understand it doesn't have a plan. It doesn't want humans to survive without the need for eating food. I don't think that will happen. If you cannot survive, you'll go away. Some other species will take your place. Okay, so these are extreme examples of malnutrition, but otherwise there are some small deficiency diseases also very commonly seen. Okay, so you probably are familiar. I think you're already mentioning these diseases to me, correct? The micronutrient deficiencies, vitamin deficiencies. You probably have heard and studied them for the exams, correct? So you're familiar about micronutrient deficiencies, okay, which are briefly talked about in this Stanford Allen book. So they talked about few micronutrient deficiencies here. Okay, so people, I think olden days, when in one particular period of time, especially here they talked about few regions. Illinois Valley, for example, in USA, they were talking about. So populations here, they mostly focused on producing maize. Okay, they started focusing on maize, and eventually what happened, because they were relying too much upon the maize, malnutrition has caused. And they noticed enamel defects, as I was shown you in some of these areas, skeletal growth is affected. So because they started relying on a single staple cereal food, so they started actually showing nutritional deficiencies because of that. For example, pellagra. Dependence on maize led to the development of pellagra. This is caused by deficiency of B vitamin called niacin. Niacin, so B complex vitamins that we have, right? So several B complex vitamins that we have. So niacin deficiency results in what is called pellagra. Okay, so pellagra resulted in pellagra. This is one nutritional deficiency disease where rashes, diarrhea, mental disturbances, even dementia can take place because of nutritional deficiency. So people who are actually relying on the maize as a single staple cereal food have shown in the evolution in the history, they have shown the deficiencies of pellagra, which is not too much seen these days. Similarly, also people from different places like United States and farmers in Southern Europe, they used to consume more cornmeal in their diet because they were poor farmers. They used to eat cornmeal. They also showed pellagra. Okay, so they've given examples of populations where this deficiency diseases have seen. But some other groups have not been affected because of other reasons, like some maize-dependent groups in Central and South America. They're not strongly affected because the way they processed the corn was different. They processed the corn with an alkali, lime ash, that release the niacin from the hull of the corn. So in the process, the external hull usually contains the vitamins. So this process actually release the niacin. So they were getting enough niacin. So they were not affected much because of the process that they adapted. And most importantly, something that we all can easily relate to is rice. So maize example you can write here, which led to pellagra, niacin deficiency in some populations. A second example you can write is rice. In Asia, rice has been the staple food crop for at least 6,000 years. And as per the records in China, beriberi disease was already described in 2697 BC. So long ago, people started already realizing nutritional deficiency diseases because of their high reliance on a single type of food crop like rice, maize. So here, beriberi is caused because of vitamin B1 deficiency or thiamine deficiency. Pellagra was a deficiency of 1B complex vitamin, that is niacin, and beriberi is a deficiency disease of thiamine. Given this B complex vitamins are very important for our metabolic functions and energy generation, our systems are drastically affected when we are deficient for that. So doesn't rice contain vitamin B1? Why these people actually are becoming deficient for it? Why we are becoming deficient for that? The problem is the processing of the rice, correct? Polishing rice. Polished rice, white rice doesn't contain. The husk around it contains enough vitamins in it, which we remove. That is now they're asking us to eat brown rice. So which is rich in vitamins. But we prefer more good looking rice than the rice that makes us look good, correct? So good appearance is actually what matters. So the white rice, which has been polished and milled to remove the hull, has been stripped of most of its vitamin content, including thiamine. Vitamin A deficiency, there's a correlation between rice eating countries and vitamin A deficiency. Eye related problems are very common in rice eating countries. And they normally quote about Japanese Navy related to that. So Japanese Navy, they have realized these type of symptoms of fatigue, drowsiness, nausea, okay, and nervous system damage happens and results in heart failure in people with this beriberi problem. And Japanese Navy identified that. Then what they have done, they provided these people, along with the rice, they started providing them the meat, vegetables, and fish, thereby dealing with this problem, providing the missing vitamins, micronutrients. Okay. Can you add any other example from our time? In last few years, what deficiency are we hearing more about? In the textbooks, vitamin A, B complex deficiencies are common. Our children without much vitamin K, they are maybe more prone to bleeding, so vitamin K is given to them. Injections are given to them. What is that vitamin that we are hearing so much these days that we are deficient in? Government has also started a program related to that, not last year, but year before. So what is that vitamin that you are hearing in the news where we are more deficient now? What is the current trend of deficiency? What vitamin are we found to be more deficient nowadays?
D.
Vitamin D. Very good. Why vitamin D?
Because our body cannot make it by itself and relies on the sun or other food items.
Food items. What food items we can get vitamin D?
Calcium rich fruits, I think.
So
Actually,
lifestyle also has changed, and vitamin D also gets from sun in the morning time.
actually, yes. Food doesn't provide much vitamin D to us. It is not part of food, except there are a few exceptions to that. Oil rich, like some form of fish probably are rich in vitamin D. But otherwise, vitamin D, the main source of vitamin D for us is sunlight, exposure to sunlight. But we actually leave home before traffic begins and we come home after traffic ends. When do we see the sun? Maybe on the monitor, right? Screensavers will contain sun in it, but not real sun indeed, right? So we are not receiving enough sunlight, hence vitamin D deficiencies have become more and more common, and vitamin D deficiency problems are becoming more common. What are the vitamin D deficiency problems? Traditionally, we talk about rickets, weak bones, because unless you have enough vitamin D, calcium doesn't get absorbed. That is why they provide calcium, vitamin D together. Calcium supplements are given together with vitamin D so that calcium gets absorbed into bones and strong bones, strong teeth can be formed. But if you don't have enough vitamin D, that calcium absorption doesn't happen very well. So what happens because of that? Demineralization, weak bones. That is what results in what is called rickets disease. You might have heard about RICKET, rickets. But that is an old story. New story is not just the weak bones. You are prone to a lot of autoimmune diseases. Even studies are pointing out that if you are deficient in vitamin D, you may be prone to cancer. Now they are linking everything to vitamin D deficiency. Even today, like even for COVID-19, they are giving vitamin D supplements. Zinc vitamin D supplements they are giving to COVID patients. Looks like immune system also depends on vitamin D. We don't have complete proof yet, but studies are pointing out at that. So more autoimmune diseases, problems like cancers, not only the bone related issues, I think these problems are becoming more and more common. So currently we are more prone to vitamin D. Our Food Regulatory Authority of India has started what is called a Project Dhoop. But we actually believe that the morning sunlight is enough, but looks like it is not sufficient. At least that is what Indian government is thinking, that we should expose children to the afternoon sunlight. You know what they recommend? Have you heard about Project Dhoop? Idea of Project Dhoop? So they're asking schools to gather children during noon time for about 15-20 minutes between about 11 to 1:30 or 11:30 to 1:30 like that, or 12 to 1:30. Between that, instead of gathering that happens in the morning, the assemblies that happen in the morning, they're asking them to conduct assemblies later in the afternoon. So more intense sunlight can be received. We have to find a balance. More sunlight exposes us to more UV. More UV means more cancer. But they're saying if you are deficient in vitamin D for children, they're suffering from other health issues. So it's better to expose them for 15 minutes or so around noon time to sun. Otherwise, usually it is recommended that before 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning sun, we want actually, doctors wanted us to take some time. Or evenings after 3 o'clock, not in the hot sun. But now government switched the idea. They wanted children to hold them for about 15 minutes in the sun at about noon time. We don't know. These are all ideas. Okay, we don't know whether this is going to do good or bad, but definitely we are not receiving enough intensity of sunlight to make enough vitamin D. Okay, right. So these are nutritional deficiency diseases. I briefly talked to you about what is the importance of diet and how did it change over a period of time from Paleolithic diet to today's diet. We talked about those aspects, and also we discussed about the deficiency diseases, macronutrient deficiency diseases. We talked about what are those two diseases we discussed today?
Erasmus and Kwashiorkor.
Erasmus and Kwashiorkor diseases. These are macronutrient deficiencies, calories and protein and calories deficiency diseases. Second, we talked about the micronutrient deficiency diseases. We talked about pellagra, we talked about beriberi. Also, I briefly added information on vitamin D to it. Otherwise, vitamin A deficiency diseases, xerophthalmia, night blindness, and vitamin C, scurvy. There are many such deficiency. Nowadays, I think we also hear about less vitamin, what is that, folic acid, vitamin B complex, rather B complex vitamin. Folic acid deficiency results in, people have spinal cord defects. Children are born with spinal cord defects. So there are many examples. I think 2-3 examples are sufficient here. Right? This is about the role of diet and diet deficiency diseases. Okay. So nutritional deficiency and related diseases. And also nutritional deficiency, malnutrition is a very common problem in India. That is why Indian government came up with the Poshan Abhiyan 1, now Poshan Abhiyan 2 was recently introduced. Okay, where they're trying to integrate various nutritional related programs and take the help of Anganwadi workers to bring more awareness about the importance of diet in our communities. Because it's not only about diet or nutritional deficiency diseases, but also our immune system. Our immune system is not well developed if you don't give proper raw material to the body. Then what happens? The disease fighting ability goes down. We are more and more prone to infections, and more premature deaths are common in the societies where malnourishment is a common problem. So it's not about the nutritional deficiency diseases, but also the physiological performance that goes down, especially in the immune system, doesn't function very well, making us prone to more and more infections. Right? So definitely diet is something that we have to greatly address in the country like India. Okay. Now, I would like to put into the current scenario. So far, conceptually, we discussed everything that is demanded by the syllabus. But I want to add a more current understanding on this. What is happening? What are the reports talking about in the scenario of Indian scenario? So first, I would like to introduce the concept of epidemiological transition theory. And in the context of that, I'll tell you where India is. Where are we in terms of the transition part? Okay. So what is epidemiological transition theory? What are the key points of epidemiological transition theory? Okay, so epidemiological transition theory is given by Omran. Omran is a scientist who gave it in 1970. Okay. So what does it mean? Epidemiology, we already understood. Transition means shift. Transition means shift. So what shift are we seeing? If you notice developed countries, developing countries, underdeveloped countries, they developed an idea related to that, which is not completely fixed. The idea is, in a way, may not hold true for every country that they are looking into. Mostly European populations that they looked at, and that is where they developed the concept of epidemiological transition. If you want, I'll give a brief reading on this, but for now, focus on what is epidemiological transition theory, what are the key stages or steps in epidemiological transition, and where do we fit? Where does India fit? So it is like a shift. Every transition refers to the shift in the disease pattern of a given population. What diseases are more common in a given population? Concept is something that you probably all can connect easily, not a complex one at all. So how disease pattern changes in a given population in correlation with the development and the progress in that country. As mortality falls during the demographic transition. Okay, so over time, I think we are able to reduce the deaths that are happening because of infections. Correct? Acute infectious diseases are reduced. So initially we see more and more. I'll show you a graph on this. I want you to build the idea. So don't focus too much on writing now. Focus on understanding now. I'm going to show you a graph. I'm going to explain that better. But I want to introduce the idea first. So focus on the idea. There's enough information on this. If you want, I can give you a nice reading on this. But understanding the concept, writing the key components will be possible now. Okay, but understand it. What you're writing, you need to know. Okay, so we're talking about how disease pattern changes with respect to the progress in a country. Initially, I think we noticed that infectious diseases are more common, and then infectious diseases will reduce, more chronic problems will show up, more long-term or non-communicable diseases will show up. So that process gradually happens, and this is what you see here in this particular image. So as per Omran, who is an US epidemiologist, so if you notice here, we're talking about mortality rate on the y-axis, death rate. On the x-axis, we're talking about the progression of this scenario. Progression of this scenario. Okay, so what do you notice here? So mortality rate, if you're noticing in the developed countries, least developed countries or underdeveloped countries like African countries. Initially, many people die from infections. People die from infections. Lot of deaths, high mortality rate. But whereas in the developed countries, low mortality rate and low communicable disease, burden. Opposite is true. So eventually what happens, the developed countries, like starting to show a shift from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases eventually, right? So what happens in least developed countries, and India is maybe somewhere in between, we are a developing country. We start noticing that mortality rate decreases, communicable disease burden decreases, non-communicable disease burden increases. But still in the developing countries, you may find still enough communicable disease burden. But mostly in the developed countries like USA, UK, Japan, lifestyle-related non-communicable diseases become more common. Diabetes, obesity, hypertension, we talked about yesterday, they become more common. In least developed countries, the mortality rate will decrease, but they still suffer from more and more communicable diseases. But the role of or share of non-communicable diseases will eventually increase. So this type of shift you normally notice, that the shift seems to be, as per the Omran, happens in 3 stages, but 2 new stages are added. I'm going to show you the current scenario of epidemiological transition theory. So transition means shift happening with respect to what people are dying from. Initially in underdeveloped countries, communicable diseases, as they develop, the shift from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases happen. And irrespective whether communicable or non-communicable, mortality rate decreases because of the technological intervention. Correct? You understand this concept? Nothing complicated here. Okay, I'll show you those 5 stages of this. Epidemiological transition, infectious disease stage, chronic diseases stages. So 5 stages now they're talking about. Stage 1, as I was telling you, infectious parasitic diseases are more common. Communicable diseases are a big burden. We're talking about it, right? Yesterday, plague, for example. So TB. So these type of problems were actually causing more death. 30% of the European population killed by plague in those times. So infectious diseases actually take a toll on us in the initial phases. And accidents, animal attacks, and natural checks on population. As per the Malthusian theory, as much as food that we produce, we actually we will never satisfy the demands for the food of a population, because population will exponentially grow, but food supply will not grow at the same rate, right? That is what is Malthusian theory. Food growth will not satisfy the growth of the population. So natural checks, what happens to people? Naturally, there are reasons where people die. Infections, they kill them. So it's not like all humans will survive and all humans need food. It's not like that. We go away. There are natural checks as per the Malthus, right? Those happens in the stage 1. Infectious disease burden will be high. Along with that, accidents, animal attacks, those type of vulnerabilities will be there. So natural means of dying happens. Stage 2, what happens? Pandemics, receding pandemics. So what happens here? Pandemics do abruptly come here and there, but the thing is you're able to control them. Better sanitation, better nutrition, better medicines. We can decrease the death rates. We can decrease the death rate happening because of the infection. So we are prepared, we are planned. We are planning towards controlling the ill effects of the diseases. So we can save people. So disease burden rate doesn't decrease, but the deaths because of disease burden rate decreases. But what happens? Slowly we become progression happens in the country. We actually will become a developing country or developed countries. What happens in those cases? Stage 3, degenerative man-made diseases. So basically non-communicable diseases. Man-made in the sense, our own activities make us prone to those diseases. They're called man-made diseases, but nothing but non-communicable diseases. I'll show you Indian report on this, NCDs. In the last 2-3 years, a lot of discussion is happening on this. Heart diseases, cancer, diabetes, obesity. Forget about the food deficiency problem, imbalanced food, overeating of certain categories of foods like fats, plus our genetics results in obesity problem becoming a common problem. We are more and more prone to diabetes. We talked about 50 genotype theory. Correct? So that happens in stage 3, non-communicable diseases and rise. So we should be very happy because India is a developing country. India is showing the signs of developed country. We are now more dying with the non-communicable diseases than communicable diseases. So that's a sign of our growth, correct? The way we are dying. So same thing happens after stage 3. After stage 1 to stage 2, what happened? We could control the communicable diseases. After stage 3, stage 4 will come where we'll know how to deal with the degenerative diseases. We delay them. We'll find solutions to them, and thereby extending the life expectancy due to medical advancements. This is what will happen, as already happening in some countries. We are in the stage 4, especially many developed countries are in stage 4. But for us, I think we are in the stage 3. We are moving from stage 2 to stage 3 now, but with enough differences between the states. Then what happens after we learn how to deal with non-communicable diseases, save people? Something unexpected is happening, which we are in the stage now. In a way, whole world is experiencing bit of this, because they may not have to happen one after other. So we are experiencing stage 5, potential resurgence of infectious diseases due to globalization. COVID-19, Ebola, Zika, bird flu. Resurgence, not necessarily new diseases. Old diseases are showing up again. Right? Global connectivity. Excuse me. Okay. So this is briefly about the epidemiological transition theory. First, what I showed you was the Omrons. Key idea that I have shown you. Okay. But later, these 2 points, extra points are added. So initially they thought 3 stages. Of course, there were many propositions, but mostly 3 stages they talked about. But later we added now stage 4, stage 5. Other scientists have added stage 4 and stage 5. This may not hold true for every population because mostly developed based on Europeans. So there may be differences. Asians may be seen slightly differently. In Africa, it may be seen slightly differently. The timing. But overall trend, I think, seems to continue because we get a hold on infectious diseases first, and then we'll see more of non-communicable diseases because of our lifestyle changes. And we'll also try to get a hold on it, but unexpected things happen. We start seeing more and more infectious diseases. So this theory is old theory, in a way about three and a half, almost 5 decades old theory with new additions that were made in last 2 decades. Okay, right. So what is the Indian scenario? Where are we? Is there any report or reports that are talking about where we are in terms of NCDs, non-communicable diseases? Have you heard anything in the news related to it? What is the current scenario of NCDs in India? How many? What percentage of deaths happen in India because of NCDs compared to communicable diseases? Any idea? Can you put a number on it? Yes.
So non-communicable diseases are increasing. So government is putting more focus on it, like diabetes and all this.
Correct.
I don't know the
What
exact
percentage do you,
number.
can you tell me what percentage of people yearly, how many people die from non-communicable diseases compared to the communicable? Percentage. Brief idea, 20%, 30%, 70%, 90%. How many people are dying from non-communicable diseases?
Just a guess, 30 to 40.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm asking you to guess. Yes, 40. Okay, good. Others? Just a guess. I just want to know your opinion. where we are.
I'm thinking some 50 to 70.
50 to 70. 40. Shall think more than 40. Sunil and Preeti, where you are? Below 40.
60, 70.
60, 70. Okay, good. Sunil, Preeti.
You're muted.
You're mute, yeah. You're on mute, please.
60 to 80 something.
Okay, I think you're around the right number. Okay, 61%. As per the last 2-3 years ago, the data that we have, 61%. 61% of Indians die from non-communicable diseases. Okay, I'll tell you what is the source for this, a news article and Government of India's official information on this. I'm going to show you briefly, but I'll also post, I made a PDF on this, so I'll post this to you. Okay, where was it?
So didn't COVID change the trend? I mean,
COVID changed what trend?
from 61 to it should have reduced it by.
Yes, but that's we're talking about average picture, right? So we're not talking about the time when COVID took over everything. So that is not usually considered. But sure, I think this will readjust the whole numbers. So that's what I'm telling you. From the period of 1990 to 2016, the study is based on 1990 to 2016. What is the scenario? Average picture that they have developed for this. Free diet. Yes. Where is disease burden report? Yeah. So look at these just few articles I'll show you quickly, but I'll give you one article for you to understand. So this is from 2017, okay? Non-communicable diseases cause 61% of deaths in India as per the WHO report. Published in Times of India in 2017, non-communicable diseases cause 61% of deaths in India. Okay, but so this actually study comes from this important report. So this is a report. This is called India Health of the Nation's States, the India State Level Disease Burden Initiative. So India State Level Disease Burden Initiative, this was published at the beginning of 2018, so 2017 and to 2018, for data taken from the 1990 to 2016. So from the literature, they've collected data about disease burden rate in India from 1990 to 2016. So that is for about 26 years of period. So this is considered to be the huge data, and a great amount of insight is obtained from it. So Department of Health Research, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, ICMR, and Public Health Foundation of India, plus other organizations called IHME. These organizations came together, so mainly led by Government of India and Ministry of Health and the concerned organizations. So they together put the data to understand the statewide disease burden report. Statewide, what is the disease burden? Communicable, non-communicable. How well are we doing? Okay, based on that, they came up with the picture of what is a non-communicable disease condition in India. Okay, you don't have to go through the report. I'm going to give you two documents here. One document is the summary of this published by government. Okay, 2, 3, 4 pages summary. Okay, that is one that I'm going to provide you. This is from Wikaspedia, India State Level Disease Burden Report. Okay, so you don't have to understand all these components here. So this is only for factual data. We provide you for factual data for essays, for your SNT part. This is very useful. But what is more common in India in terms of diseases? But even more important than this, I think I'm going to show you this non-communicable disease and risk factors. This document I'm going to use. This I'm going to share with you. Okay, this I have downloaded from our government Ministry of Health government website. Okay, so National Health Portal, NHP, non-communicable diseases and the risk factors. I think this fits very well into our requirements. Briefly summarize what we need to know for the exam point of view. So I'm going to use this as a source. Majority of them we already discussed, but few statistics you can take from here. India specific statistics. Okay, nice summary is provided here. So non-communicable diseases are, what are they? We already talked about it. Medical conditions that are not caused by infectious agents. They're chronic, so meaning they actually go for long duration, slowly develops, and they may stay forever with us, or they may take us with them. Correct? So they are long duration problems, chronic problems, not acute problems. And generally show slow progression. And what causes them? Both genetic factors, physiological factors, environmental factors, and behavior. What are the four factors here? Genetics make us more and more prone to the problems. Diabetes. You're maybe prone to diabetes because of your genes, heart problems because of your genes, cancers because of your genes. Plus physiology, how well your body is performing, how well hormones are controlled. Environmental problems, where are you surviving, what are you eating, what is the pollution rate in the region you are living, and your behavior. So I'm going to provide you this, okay? So I'm going to provide you this, get the idea. So this is nothing complicated, we discuss majority of the events. So get the idea, get the flow, that is very important. Content is there, I'm providing you this. So genetic, physiological, environmental, behavior. Genetic factors, risk factors for a disease. Genetic disease, anyway, we know it has to be genetic. But genetically influenced diseases like diabetes and others, where genetic factors are running in the families. Physiological, how well your body is performing, hormonal situation in your body, which is again depends on environmental components, both genetic and environmental components. Environment is what you eat, where do you live, how good is the environment, like in terms of, let's say, air quality. Pollutant cities, Delhi, you may find more and more problems, more long-term problems you experience because you're exposed to the particulate matter more than usual. Lung problems, lung burden rate is high. Or you're living in a rural area where you cook inside using traditional wood, for example. What happens? Lung problems are more common. Or behavioral factors into tobacco, into smoking, into alcohols. Behavior can also influence our diseases. So non-communicable diseases are controlled by these different factors, four factors. So very much important. Non-communicable disease-based questions are very much possible in the exam. So general idea, expand on these concepts. What are they? How are they different from communicable disease as we discussed in yesterday's class? What are the key factors behind non-communicable diseases? Okay, and they're becoming more and more important of public health concern in 21st century. Not only because they cause health issues, but also because of their impact on socio-economic development of the country. A lot of health burden that we are noticing because of this. So socio-economic development is also affected because of non-communicable diseases. Cancer, imagine what happens when a person gets cancer in a given family. Whole life gets disturbed. If he is the man who is actually responsible for running the family, what happens to the socio-economic status? How much they can contribute to the GDP of the country if they're going through such a problem, where there is no clear solution. It's an ongoing problem for their life. Whole family gets disturbed. And it's like that, if the disease burden rate because of cancer increases, what happens to the country with where more incidence of cancer is there? Look at US, high incidence of cancer rates, good GDP, but what do? They have to spend more money for controlling cancers. And they have a system where they actually have to pay for the expenditure of the health. Patients, they're mostly, of course, US is slightly different story, but if you go to other developed countries, government pays for the treatments. So how much of burden will that be if the disease condition or a disease burden rate in a given country is increasing because of cancers, which is the case. Overall cancer rates are increasing everywhere in the world, including India. These NCDs kill about 41 million people. That is about 71% of the global deaths. Globally 71%, India 61%. 41 million people each year die from non-communicable diseases. And out of them, 14 million of them die between ages 30 and 70. Premature deaths. Are we not hearing people are dying with heart attacks at the age of 40? Well accomplished entrepreneurs. They're dying early. Stress they're not able to handle. They're not giving proper attention to their health. What happens to the body? It's a machine, it will give up. It's complained many times. Finally, it said it's enough. I'm tired of your businesses. They die. Body is not coping up the stress that they are taking. Premature deaths are becoming more and more common. And they are preventable if you realize the conditions. Epidemiological studies would provide insight why, what type of lifestyle is needed, what food you need to eat. We get insight into that. That is an importance of epidemiological studies. But by 2030, as per WHO, 55 million people die from 2030 to die from NCDs. By 2030, this death rate will go up. From 41 million, it will go up to 55 million if we don't take proper steps or proper measures. Okay, so the statistics are important. Briefly to quote or to talk about the severity of the NCDs. In India, if you see Indian scenario, 5.8 million, 58 lakhs of people, as per WHO report 2015, this number may be slightly high now, die from NCDs. 5.8 million people die from NCDs. 61% of Indians, as I was telling you, in the last 26 years of information, if we gather, they're dying from non-communicable diseases. So compared to 1990 to 2016, the disease contribution has quite changed. What are those diseases that we are dying from? Heart and lung diseases, stroke, cancer, diabetes, those ones. Okay, so if you see in this document, this is how you have to use the document. The document I've shown you. Don't get into all the details here. Rising burden of non-communicable disease in all states. Statewide differences are there. Okay, but overall health is improving, but still not enough. That is what this report talks about. So non-communicable diseases are usually increasing. Cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, chronic respiratory problems, mental health, neurological diseases, cancers, they are increasing. Okay, so this is the actual table that talks about it. So if you see, I think what we are noticing here, disease categories we're talking about. First part is communicable diseases. This part is communicable. Okay, and the bottom one is a non-communicable disease. And they're talking about different state groups, EAG states, empowered action group states that we have, where usually they are behind in terms of health conditions. Some northern states and also northeastern states are put separately. Other states, they group them differently depending on the response. Right, so 27.5 million in India. If you have 131, I think it's much crossed the 131 now. So let's say 140. So, but according to that, so 2016-2017 data, 27.5 million people die from the communicable diseases, whereas 61.8 die from non-communicable diseases. Okay, this is percentage. 27.5% from communicable, let's say 30%, 60% from non-communicable diseases. That is where the newspaper talked about 61% from this. What type of diseases? Look at the one with the major burden, 28.1. Cardiovascular disease is a major burden. We were trying to connect it to food, diet. Cardiovascular disease is 28.1% disease, 30% of deaths in India. So 50% of the non-communicable disease burden coming from cardiovascular disease. What is next? 10.9, respiratory diseases, not infections. Respiratory problems, burden, which make us more prone to infections as well. So next, cardiovascular diseases first, respiratory problems next, non-communicable ones. Third, cancers, 8.3% cancers. 8.3% from cancer. So first cardiovascular, 28%. Next, chronic respiratory problems, more long-term lung problems, 11%. Cancers, 8.3%. So gone, 50% is gone because of these diseases. 50% of share of these three things. Rest of them, liver problems, digestive problems, neurological problems, diabetes, blood, endocrine problems, hormonal problems, 6.5%. So this is, talk about them. What is the disease burden rate, and as relevant in your discussion, talk about these components. Okay, so you can access it. I'm not going to provide you this document, but write down the key points. If you're interested, I can send you the link that is available freely online. But I think Wikispedia summary is sufficient for us. Even from Wikispedia summary I showed you before, just key points. Otherwise, the key document should be the one I'm talking about. Okay, have you made a note of these diseases? These are non-communicable diseases. Maybe just make a note of communicable disease scenario. Out of 30% disease burden we have with communicable diseases, what are the most common ones here? Look at this line. Diarrhea, lower respiratory problems, and other common infectious diseases. They clubbed it together. Diarrhea, very common problem in developing countries. Lower respiratory problems, respiratory infections like pneumonia, etc. And other infectious diseases cause 15%. 50% of the communicable diseases burden comes from this. 15% because of diarrhea, respiratory infections, etc. The second category is HIV and tuberculosis. AIDS and TB, 5.4% disease burden. TB is a major threat, communicable diseases. TB is a major threat because in India, we have 25% of the cases in the world. 25, if 1 crore people are dying from or affected with TB, 25 lakhs come from India. So 25, even 27% of burden rate is coming from, in the world, whole TB burden, quarter of the burden is in India. So TB is a big challenge for us now. HIV we are able to control to a certain extent, but TB we could not so far. Big burden. Okay, right. So going back to so I'll share this document, summary of this study. Can use for other sources, but otherwise this is a main document that Health Ministry's National Health Portal's data that I'm providing is most important. So this is what they're talking about. They're referring to the health of the nation states, government of India. They've provided the contribution of NCDs from 30%. Initial stages, 1990, we had 30%, and now it went on close to 60% in 2016. Okay, increase in the proportion of NCDs. Total disease burden is 55, and NCDs disease burden is 61. It was 37% in 1990. 2016, it came to 61%. You see the trend, how NCDs share is increasing from 37 in 1990 to 61 in 2016. So this is clearly showing the rapid epidemiological transition with a shift in disease burden to NCDs. Stage 3. So India is experiencing it. They also talked about risk factors, which we already discussed. What is the risk factor? Sedentary lifestyle, so physical activity, unhealthy diets, micronutrient deficient diet, more salt, more fat, use of tobacco, smoking, second-hand smoke, smokeless tobacco, chewing tobacco. alcohol. These are all the risk factors. Correct? Add a subheading and make a note of these things when you are making notes. What are the examples of NCDs? What is the current scenario in India? What are the risk factors for NCDs? Make subheadings like that. So your answer will be very informed. Plus environment, air pollution, outdoor air pollution. If you notice it, indoor air pollution is decreasing as per the report, outdoor air pollution is increasing. Outdoor air pollution, very polluted areas are actually affecting our lungs. Okay, so long-term problems, not only exposure time, but long-term problems are seen because of it. Other reasons, globalization, industrialization, rapid urbanization, lifestyle changes. You can add them in the factors. So in many countries, why do we have these problems? They're ongoing. NCDs are rapidly increasing because of many factors like this. So what is Indian government doing? I don't think this is important for anthropological view, but you can just take an idea. So Indian government has recognized that there is a need to put more focus on NCDs. They started national program for prevention and control of cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease and stroke. It is called NPCDCS, National Program for Prevention of Cancer, Diabetes, Cardiovascular Diseases, and Stroke. So cardiac care units, NCD clinics, advertisements on the risk factors associated with them. Screening, they're asking people at certain ages of life, women in the ages of middle-aged women, they are more and more prone to ovarian cancers, for example. Right? Screening is required. If you go to developed countries, screening is must. Government will ask you to take the screening. Pap smear test, specific blood test need to be done. If it is men, prosthetic cancer is common in them. Certain screening, protein screening, what is that called? I think I mentioned to you, PSA antigen we look for prostate cancer. Some screenings are being done. Government is recommending that to carry out opportunistic screening at primary healthcare levels, so that we can catch the problem early on and treat the problem before it becomes a big hurdle. Okay, so this is one national program for preventing these non-communicable diseases. Indian government has started a program. Plus, WHO has recommended Global Action Plan for Prevention and Control of NCDs 2013 to 2020, so which ended recently. India is the first country to adopt the National Action Plan. India is always first in adapting the plan, but the problem comes with implementation. Correct? Global TB we want to control. We want to end it by 2025, but we have highest burden. Last Nation Action Plan didn't actually succeed. We came up with a better plan, eliminate TB, and doing not much, unfortunately. And drug resistant problem is a big problem in India. Communicable disease we're not able to handle in future because drugs are not working. And India became the center for that. Antimicrobial resistance. So we brought the National Action Plan, and along with the basically to reduce the number of premature deaths, because to 25% by 25, from 60% to 25% in next 4 years. It's less than, sometimes I feel like, so you decided to write your UPSC exam. You say that the first attempt I'm going to clear prelims, mains, my interview. I think nothing wrong in it, but we have to also have plan, correct? I think we have that in our blood, that we want to do it overnight. I think we have to realize that it takes a lot of work, a lot of efforts, and some luck, for sure. Okay, so India is already working. We also are focusing along with the national, as part of the WHO plan, we are also focusing on reducing the household air pollution. Okay, so we are trying to reduce the reduction in household use of solid fuel and also tobacco usage, so that we can reduce the risk factors for the non-communicable diseases. Okay, this is a brief summary. I'm going to share this with you. Okay, so many government steps have been taken for that Ayush, and along with the program that have come together, online mobile technology applications, M diabetes, M cessation, no more tension, for handling few issues, diabetes awareness, quitting tobacco. There are apps. Government has introduced these apps. So we are taking ICT tools, technological intervention, for bringing more awareness in public. Okay, so read it. So unite in the fight against NCDs by all these steps: physical activity, healthy diet, no tobacco, reduction alcohol, cleaner cities, less polluted cities, universal health coverage are the steps that government is suggesting. Okay, right. So this is about the NCD scenario and transition. This is transition. Okay, right. Anything else? I think one couple of points I just wanted to mention to you. We're going to end the session here, but few things I want you to focus on from reading. So in the Ellen, the handout that I've sent you yesterday, I think there was one component. I just wanted to make a note of this. Okay, before diet, they said how we respond to the disease, social aspect of disease response, cultural and behavioral interventions. Also read this. What they talked about here. Generally, they talked about infectious disease and evolutionary race. So our immune system, we have great immune system. We talked about in immunogenetics. Antigens are recognized by our immune system. Antibodies are made. Cytokines are made. We have specific WBCs to attack the pathogens. We talked about it. This is what our immune system does. In evolution, we developed this. Special types of WBCs have evolved. So they're protecting us from infections. Okay, and also from non-communicable diseases like cancers are protected by our immune system indeed. Also, in addition to that, no cultural and behavioral in interventions. Like initially when leprosy had happened, what people have done, people started quarantining people because leprosy is a communicable disease. So what they have done in old world, people with leprosy were shunned and forced to live apart from the bulk of the population. They quarantined them, which we are hearing today, but this quarantining process happened already centuries ago. Okay, because they recognize the contagious nature of the condition. Second component, vaccination. Vaccination is, we are highly relying for COVID-19 on vaccination. Not a very new concept. Vaccination was already there. So they said smallpox information that when they have seen, which originated 12,000 years ago in Africa, in a country like China, they already were practicing vaccination. Okay, in olden world, we already have the concept, preliminary version of the vaccination concept was already there. They took multiple examples here. So in 180 AD, smallpox epidemic killed 3.5 to 7 million people in Roman Empire. Okay, so what they have done, they started coming up with the remedies for it. In some culture, they expose children to smallpox. They take the pus from the lesion, they powder it, dry it, powder it, and inhale it. In China, they were practicing, it was called variolation. Variolation practice. So powdered scab of smallpox was used in China, blown into the nostrils. This is part of vaccination program. In a way, not program, vaccination concept it is. Similarly, in Turkey, people were introducing, wherever they don't see the scars, which they don't want to see the scars, they were introducing the pus material from the less infected people. So these practices were already there. Turkish method was to make 4 or 5 small scratches on the skin, introduce pus from the infected person into them. Taking risk, they all can also kill people, but they did that. England, method was introduced in England, like that it got spread from Turkey, England, China, even India, they say that. But mostly I think China was credited for this, as I see in the literature. So like that vaccination concept started much, much earlier. And today we are using more of the more sophisticated technology for this, more biotechnology, more sophisticated technology for this. Okay, right. So also focus on these things, evolution, adaptations in our immune system. Okay, this we talked about blood groups, some resistance that we provide. Evolution is also playing a role. Certain blood groups make us more and more resistant to infections. Right? We talked about bacterial diseases, viral diseases. Okay. Also, they talked about this component. Okay. People with some rare blood groups like Duffy blood groups, they are found to be resistant to something like malaria. Okay. These examples are also important in evolution. Otherwise, this is what I want to talk to you. So in the next class, and before starting with the next topic, what I would do is I would like to spend a few minutes on COVID-19 as well. In the scenario, COVID-19 also a question came in the exam. I'm going to focus on that question in the next class. Okay, so briefly we'll talk about COVID-19 in connection with this. Otherwise, the core concept of epidemiological anthropology is done. Okay, NCD scenario also we talked about. I think we covered these two references. So Allen Stanford biological anthropology reference plus the reference from the IGNO. We use those two and the reports. The reports in the NCD disease condition honors. I might give you a bit of reading on the disease transition, epidemiological transition. That should be enough. Okay, for our discussion, and we have discussed enough examples. So otherwise, 10th unit, what I'm going to focus next. Concept of human growth, but before that, brief idea on COVID-19 I'm going to provide. Okay, there is a great article that came in Cell, which discusses about various factors, why epidemics are emerging, whatever epidemics, few articles from World Economic Forum I was looking into. So I'm going to give you a brief summary on it. Right, any questions guys, before we end the session for today? Any questions you have? Is the concept clear to you? Is something that digestible? Less complex indeed compared to the many other technical chapters like markers. This is much easier to follow. You just need to know the concept right and what to write for that. Is that sufficient? Is a discussion that does it provide you enough comfort related to this topic, this unit?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. Right. So right guys, then that's it for today. So tomorrow we're going to normal class time, correct? So bit of COVID and then unit 10 that we're going to begin with. I think we're going as planned so far. So this week, Tuesday, right? So we should be able to wind up most of the 10th this week, 10th unit. So 11th, 12th. So 4 more units will be left with. Okay, right guys?
Thank you.
Have a look at the past questions, okay, from this unit and see if you can answer them or not. If not, ask me what specific questions you have difficulty with. So familiarize with the questions that are being asked in the exam as well. Okay, I'll do that in the next class. Right. Thank you guys. Bye.